and they know that I and every other senior official and minister, including the current Prime Minister and then occupant of the same building, Rishi Sunak, believed that we were working lawfully together. So fundamentally, at the root of this, he does not believe the tale of Partygate. He thought he was in groups working in Downing Street.
Yeah, but I mean, the best possible version of the Boris Johnson story is that people were having parties with karaoke machines and booze in Downing Street, and he either didn't know or he didn't know that was against his own rules. Like, there's not a version of Partygate in which Boris Johnson comes out looking good. There's a version in which he knew what was going on and lied to the House, which is the bad end of the spectrum. And there's one in which he simply had no idea what was going on inside his private office in the building from which he was commanding the government response to the pandemic, which is also, like, not brilliant. Also, the important thing to bear in mind about the committee report is the committee report does not have any automatic consequences. The committee makes a recommendation, and it is the House of Commons that decides whether or not to endorse the sanctions recommended by the committee. So ultimately what Boris is saying is that he doesn't think that he could have persuaded the House of Commons, which remember has a large Conservative majority, which he won. He doesn't think that he could persuade that House of Commons to reject the finding. That's ultimately it. This is not a sanction from a particular group of MPs. They do the report and they draw up the recommendations, but it is the entire House of Commons that votes on whether to uphold or reject the recommendations of the committee, and that is the judgment that he is fleeing from by resigning his constituency.
And what now for him? Money-making, circuit-speaking, book-writing future? Is that what holds him?
I mean, yeah, for now, he's very good at it. He'll go and make an awful lot of money. And then I suppose the question is, it's very unlikely that Boris will vanish from the scene, right? I think he actually would probably, had it proven possible and sustainable, he probably have quite liked to be on the backbenches playing the great prince over the water. So who knows? Maybe there will be some TV station that will find a berth for him and give him a show. He's a good showman, if nothing else. I imagine that we'll still be hearing from him. He might return to his Daily Telegraph column, but he won't vanish. But it will definitely be throwing grenades from the sidelines for the foreseeable future.
And he has a real accusation about Brexit. I'm not alone in thinking that there is a witch hunt underway to take revenge for Brexit and ultimately to reverse the 2016 referendum result. My removal, he says, is the necessary first step, and I believe there has been a concerted attempt to bring it about. Do you think there is?
No. Is it the case that the civil service, elements of the civil service, had difficulty adjusting to the change of what was 40 years of British policy? Absolutely. Are there very real problems with the civil service in specific areas like the Home Office that need addressing? Yes. But what brought Boris Johnson down was that 50 of his own ministers that he appointed from his party resigned. That's why he had to go. Is he suggesting that his own government, of his own ministers, were complicit in this civil service plot? I'm sorry, it's ridiculous. It's an absolutely ridiculous allegation. Fundamentally, there are specific problems which are not helped by Boris Johnson inflating them in this way. But the reason he had to resign as Prime Minister is because he lost the confidence of the Conservative MPs that worked with him day in and day out, many of whom owed him their seats in as much as they won their seats in 2019. So we should not give credence to these conspiracy theories.
He's had 3 bites at the parliamentary cherry, has he not? First selected as a Conservative candidate for Clwyd South back in 1997, lost to Labour, that landslide obviously for Tony Blair. 2001 stood again, winning in Henley-on-Thames, re-elected 2005. Then, of course, as we remember, stood as Mayor of London in a narrow victory, beating the sitting Ken Livingstone, winning again as mayor in 2012, returned to Parliament in 2015, winning the current seat that he's now resigning from, Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Could he come back once more, do you think, Henry?
I mean, yeah, he could. He's Boris Johnson. Of course he could. Yeah, anything could happen. I refuse to say that he's gone forever because I've said it before and I've always been wrong. Frankly, I think if he'd fought this by-election, there's a decent chance that he might have won it, and that would have immediately transformed the entire narrative around Boris Johnson. So are there circumstances in which he comes back at some point, especially if the Conservatives spend a long time in the wilderness after they lose? Quite possibly. Is it likely at this point? I don't think so.
Henry Hill, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Statement from Jacob Rees-Mogg, one of those who's benefited from the Boris Johnson